Hi, this is a reflection on lesson 350 in A Course in Miracles, and it says, Miracles mirror God's eternal love. To offer them is to remember Him, and through His memory to save the world. So I didn't really connect deeply with this as if there was some new revelatory concept they were trying to get at or feeling or anything, because but the one thing that felt new in this is that mirroring miracles. It talks about miracles being the thing we can give each other that is like exponentially perpetuating. It just grows by giving it. We don't have lack. It's not like we lost or without the thing we just gave. It is we have it. We still have it, and we gave it, and that person can turn around and have it and give it. And so that's what a miracle is. And so that perpetual havingness and givingness feels like God. And when it talks about the miracles mirror God's eternal love, so eternal meaning it just goes on forever. It is without time. It is without boundaries. And that's what miracles feel like. There are no boundaries for miracles. And miracles, it feels like surprise. It feels like the unexpected. And I feel like that's what God is. And that's what struck me here. Struck me as a slightly new way of thinking about God. Because, if you've been watching these, I keep coming back to like, what even is God? I feel like I have less of an idea now, 350 lessons in to this book of what God is to me personally than I did before I started this journey. And so, but I love that because it is breaking down any walls, like structure, rigidness, about this concept called God. And so I'm becoming more like God is literally everything. There are no boundaries to God. So there's room enough for all of us to have a different concept of what God is to us, a different feeling of what God is, etc. Then it made me think of, okay, I said it wasn't deep or profound or big, but this, I guess it's touching a lot of things, at least. That what it touched for me was, okay, this is a new thing. When I think about there's room enough for all the different experiences that we have as humans, and I feel like you can find a God in all of it, because there's this magicness, this unexpected surprise in the way that we are all so unique, and each learning ourselves through the other, through reflecting those things in us. Like we see it in other people and we're like, yeah, I feel that, or I resonate with that. We see it in something we watch, like we keep learning about ourselves through what we see in others, going and thinking, man, we're so different, yet really we're all the same. Or we go and saying we're so the same, yet we find, oh my God, we're so different. Like there's just magic in that blows off the doors of like expectation and judgment. This book talks all about judgment, and then goes into accepting all that is. Like, because to me, the what I keep coming back to is there's room enough. So personally, I had an experience this morning with, I don't know, I was up early, and I go through phases of what types of things I watch on YouTube. I get into like spiritual stuff, I get into science stuff, quantum physics, history, and all these things. And I'm on a kind of a educational science kick, because I love learning about that stuff. And they talked about aphantasia, which is the inability to visualize things in your mind's eye. And I've heard about it for years because I think it was discovered as a thing some people have. Back in 2010, somebody had an accident. I don't even know the whole story. And then when he recovered, he had lost his ability to have visual imagery. And they thought, wow, how'd that happen? And then other people wrote in to the reporter who reported on that story. It was like, I've been that way my whole life. Like, so many people wrote in, I guess, and said that it spurred this like discovery that, oh my God, we don't all have the same visual capacity. It doesn't, but it's a spectrum. And so that's why it's so hard, I think, why it took so long to like recognize, hey, but it's coming about too the same time when we're talking about spectrums and autism and ADHD, and all of the things really are things of spectrum. There's room enough on a spectrum, right? Nothing's yes or no, black or white, where things are excluded. Everything exists on a spectrum. So I'm sitting there going like, well, okay, I have time, and I'm watching a science video on aphantasia where they're going deeper to this thing I've already heard about. And I thought, man, that'd be weird to not be able to have the ability to call things into mind. I wonder what that's like. Plot twist, I may be one of those people. But again, it's a spectrum. So I'm talking to my husband, and the whole thing was through the course of this video. I was like, holy shit. The way they're describing the way people call images to mind, I'm like, I don't have that. I just see black. I don't have, like, what the mind's eye feels like is a memory. So I'm like, of course I know what a tree looks like. If you tell me to call to mind a tree, call to mind an apple, whatever. Of course, but it feels like the same way in my mind that a memory feels like. I don't see it visually. It's like this faint essence of a thing, but I don't see things clearly, as in, oh, here's the landscape of the tree, and here's the color and the texture, and I don't. So anyway, but it feels like memory to me. And they said that was one of the differences, I think, is that things aren't vivid or visual or colorful or crisp. They're more like that. And so I was like, I still don't think, I fall somewhere on the spectrum like we all do. Okay. I still am trying to figure out, I want to know what my internal experience is like compared to others, because it's fascinating to me. It won't change my life if I ultimately am one of those 2 to 5% of the population. It won't change my life at all, because I don't know any different. The only thing it did for me was like, if I am one of those people, what is their experience like? It must be so amazing to see things in like color and vivid and animated and so easily called to mind. And because I've always had to learn by memory, and my memory's failing. So now I don't know what to make of that. So anyway, I'm talking to my husband this morning, and over coffee, and I was like, hey, have you heard of aphantasia? No. Okay. So I go into describing what it is, and I was like, okay, do you want to do a little fun thing? Okay, so I close your eyes and call to mind an apple. And he's like, done. And first of all, it was so fast. I was like, whoa. Okay, can you describe your experience of calling that to mind? What did it look like? And he's like, oh yeah, it was red, it was bright, it was blah, 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 blah. And like, that was so easy. And I was like, he's like, why, what do you see? And I'm like, I just see black, like the backs of my eyelids, kind of black. And I was like, so what I'm trying to understand is, yes, I know what an apple looks like. I know what a red apple looks like. I don't see it, but I have it's like, it's formed of memory. My feeling of what this thing is in my mind's eye. It's like a memory. So for him though, he said, no, I don't see the black, like the eyelid color anymore. It's just replaced with red apple. Like he sees it. And I was like, whoa. And so, but still, I don't know if we're having the same experience, or we're just describing our experience differently. So we kept playing around, and I had to get to work, but we sat there for like a half hour doing different like comparisons and experiments. And he was like, okay, wait, you're saying you don't see anything? You just see. And I'm like, yeah, but when you close your eyes, we did this test, close your eyes, don't think of anything yet. What do you see? Do you just see black, like the back of your eyelids? He's like, yeah, it's like lit up by, we're sitting for the Christmas tree. So I had like light black, light dark. And I was like, yeah, me too. That's what I had. And then, okay, now think of the apple. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, what happened to the black eyelid color that you just saw before you called that to mind? He's like, it's gone. And I'm like, what? Mine never leaves. Like, there's nothing that comes in its place. It's just still black. And then I just can call to mind like memories. Like, it's almost like a montage conglomeration of memory of all the apples I've been in contact with in my life. You know what I mean? And so we kept going on, and I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I guess I'm bored still. I'm waiting between clients. So, but it has to do with the lesson and like the difference in our experience. There's room enough for all of it. And it's more like wants to draw me closer to people instead of being separate. And like this whole eternal God love feels like that drawing closer to the differences in our experience, because that's how we're learning about each other and about ourselves and finding out we're more alike than we thought and we're more different than we thought. And it's that's I think what makes us, it's just fascinating. I don't even know what to call it. When you can say we're more alike than I thought and we're more different than I thought. What even is that? Then what are we talking about? It's so confusing. It's paradox. So anyway, so back to the story. I just had to tie it back for a minute so I don't lose track. So we're just doing like, okay, think of a color, and so I'm like, okay, and he tells me a color. He said maroon, and I was just like, all I still see is black, the backs of my eyelids, but I have a memory of what maroon is. Like, I can go to a store and pick out a maroon shirt. I'm not color blind or color confused. I just don't see it. So I was like, well, what do you see? Okay, close your eyes. And I picked a color, and he's like, yeah. And he does that like real fast. Like, oh yeah, so easy. Got it. Done. And I'm like, okay, what's your experience of that color in your mind's eye? And I said, is the black eyelid thing gone? He's like, yeah. And then there's just this full visual experience of the color, meaning there's no like, it's not contained. He just sees the whole color as if that's all there is, like not contained within a shape, or like a frame. And I was like, what? And then I'm still not clear if we're having the same or different kinds of experience or just describing them differently. Isn't that funny? And I think that's why it's been so, this aphantasia thing has been a mystery for so long, or just undiscovered for so long, because like the people who talk about it that think they have it, they're like, yeah, I just thought, it was like metaphor, like, or it was like memory. And, when we'd say, call something to mind, and now things are starting to make so much more sense in my lived experience. Like thinking back for years, the one that jumped to mind this morning, I was having shower thoughts. And the one that jumped to mind was like, that thing people say, like, if you're afraid of public speaking, just get up there and just imagine everyone naked, and it'll just put you at ease. I've never understood that. Like, I first of all can't imagine a room of people naked. I can't even, if the person's right in front of me, I've just never understood. I can't do it. Like, I don't see it. But in my head, I was like, yeah, I get how that could put you at ease, because you're just saying, like, we're all ridiculous, or don't take it too seriously. Like it was more of a conceptual thought based. Oh yeah, I get it. But and I thought, are people actually thinking that is so funny and actually useful and helpful to them in real life public speaking situations? Like they've tried it and it works because they have the ability to visualize it like clearly. And it actually does have an effect because the research shows that the people who like the visual is so tied to emotion, right? So the people who can visualize are like when they see something, they can tap into that emotional state, or it triggers an emotional state more readily than people with aphantasia who can't visualize. That makes a lot of sense. It's just like the people who are drawn to music, and like music can move them emotionally. For me, I'm all like words. Words are my thing. So it's like I read poetry and or like good writing in a movie. I'm always like, man, that's really bad writing. Or really good writing. I'm always drawn to like the words and the way they hit me and make me feel and all that. Where Matt, my husband, he's like, whatever. But for him, it's no wonder now. I'm thinking back to our differences in movie tastes and all, and his, or like the visual, like will really move him. And I can appreciate the visuals, but what gets me is all the writing and the words and so this thinking back through life, it's like makes a lot of sense how things. So anyway, like the visual being tied to emotional, they say that people with aphantasia have less occurrence of PTSD for that reason. Because my husband asked me, like, well, do you think people with aphantasia or it's because of trauma? And I said, funny you ask, because they did talk about that and say, well, they're still doing research. It's only a discovery 15 years ago, but they're saying that no, not really, not necessarily. There's no correlation, because actually, like when they took the PTSD examples, those people had more like aphantasia or hyper aphantasia instead of lack of aphantasia, like aphantasia, because the visuals were more like realistic in their minds. So every time they recall it, it's like it stirs up that emotion more readily. Whereas me, it's like I can think about really traumatic things from my life and it doesn't stir me up. Like it's just an image I wish I could forget because it's not great, but it doesn't make me feel now what does make me feel it is when I conceptually think about all the things surrounding that. But it's more like conceptual, situational. It's not like the imagery of the traumatic events. So anyway, I just thought, holy crap, I had no idea we were having completely different inner world experiences. And yet I don't feel like it's going to affect my life whatsoever. I just kind of had that temporary bummer of a moment that was like, oh, what's that like? I want to see red apples instead of black. I visualize an apple. I just am curious, like, what would that be like? But it's not going to change my life. So what it did for me, though, if I have it or if I don't have it, whatever, just knowing that we're having different inner experiences, like I intuitively know that. I work with people who I'm like working with them in our different lived experiences. And it opened a whole nother door. Like, what else could be different? It like that whole blasting the doors off my mind. The lesson talks about the eternal love. It's like big, all encompassing, no boundaries, no separation. Everything's allowed. Why do we humans have to like segment and categorize. I love thinking in terms of spectrums for that reason. Like there is no inside, outside, yes or no, on or off. It's like there's literally a spectrum for everything. Even quantum mechanics is all about probabilities and waves and, less about, somebody made a good analogy about how, I don't know if this probably isn't even related, but I really loved it and wanted to think about it more. Like our between the Eastern and Western world, I think was their example. Like the Western world is all about looking in a microscope, and you keep zooming into finer and finer particles eventually. That everything is matter concretized. I don't know how to say that, or if it's even correct, but like discrete things, they just get smaller and smaller. And the Eastern world was like thinking about Eastern versus Western. Eastern would be like looking at a telescope up at the stars, and like how everything is just like all encompassing, contained within the whole, coexists. It feels to me more like that's the God aspect, is like everything can coexist and is allowed, and you don't think about things in terms of like discrete particles when you think of God and spirit and love. It's like all inclusive, eternal. So anyway, that's where this lesson took me. I guess it was more profound for me than I thought, and then I started out saying, but thanks for listening to my story. I'd be curious what your inner world is like, how you visualize things. I do have to say what I was like, now it makes sense why I get, like, we all have different experiences. It doesn't mean this relates to aphantasia. It just means I have different ways of, like, what different senses might be hyper or more elevated than my visual sense. I think it's my auditory. And even in my intuitive practice, I hear things or I feel things. I don't see things. Even my Reiki master, she would say, visualize this. Isn't it great? Blah, blah, blah. And doesn't it do this and that? And I was just like, I must be doing this wrong. It must be bad. I must be too new at this. Maybe it'll come. So I'll be like, yeah. And then through Reiki, I had to find my own way, over practice was like, wait a minute. I pick up energy differently. I don't see it. I can't even visualize the things. And so now that makes sense. And then I was like, what else is different? Okay, so I think the auditory thing, I'll hear stuff usually on the left side, and it's like words and sentences, just all the time. And it's sometimes took it to mean like just my inner monologue. And now I know the difference with what my inner monologue is and something different, which might be just intuition or the clairaudience aspects, if you want to go there. And so, and also why I might get earworms stuck in my head more. Like my husband will be humming something, maybe, I don't know, and I'll get it stuck in my head. And I'm like, damn you, I'm susceptible. And it'll play for weeks. Like I've had a song stick for so long, and it's that thing it's constantly in the background. It's like the landscape or the soundtrack to everything else going on. Every other thought I'm having, every other act or behavior I'm doing, like working on or chore I'm doing, whatever. And then sometimes it'll fade farther back, and then when it comes back, I feel like it's always picking up where it would have been in the song had that much time passed. And I'm like, no, and it's just so I'll even be like, I don't know, it just happens so often with auditory stuff. And then the sensation stuff, like my husband calls me an HSP, highly sensitive person, because things are very, like, I pick up stuff very, like, even holding this phone hurts my hand, not in a tactile kind of ergonomic way, but in a, oh God, whatever that energy is from the phone, it feels toxic. It's not, so anyway, so maybe you feel that too. Maybe it's like everyone feels that when they hold their phone. So I have to put it away from myself at bedtime, and I'm more aware of, like, when I'm around electronics that are, like, seemingly, it's not all electronics either. It's just like that seems like the more, like, potent ones, like this phone. I dropped it, is potent. So anyway, that's what it makes me think of, is how we're all so different in the way our perceptions are, and that everything is so cool and allowed, and it's just fascinating. I'm so glad we're in a time in life when we are more inclusive, and when a newness comes up and when we're sharing our experience, it's more like, oh, cool, versus like, you're different and we're going to exclude you. That's how we grew up in the 80s, 70s, 80s. Whereas now it's more like, oh, cool, let's create like a group that where more of us can get together and share what makes us unique, So it's kind of cool that we live in that time. I guess that's it. Bye.